Today we're taking a look at the latest information on Jack Eichel. Turns out the Ottawa Senators have actually kicked tires on the top center. Could he even end up there? Could we see a deal in the nation's capital in Canada? We also have word about the Carolina Hurricanes shopping for a top six forward that could possibly be Vladimir Tarasenko. We also have several other updates, including some signings, and maybe Zdeno and Chara going to the Florida Panthers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. We have some trade rumors, some free agent rumors, and some signings and news from around the NHL. So first up, I want to talk about some of the latest signings. We had another RFA deal and some ELCs take place here today. The Red Wings came to terms with our RFA forward Erne. He gets a 2-year deal valued at $2.1 million. So another pretty decent signing by Yzerman and the Red Wings. Erne, of course, has been there for a few years after coming over from Tampa, following Yzerman up to Detroit. And, he's been an okay player for him. Not a big star by any means, but it's certainly a decent depth piece on there. So, 2 years, $2 million. Pretty low risk for all sides involved, and a decent contract here as well. As I mentioned, we do have a variety of entry-level deals that were signed today as well. The Carolina Hurricanes have signed a pair of 2021 NHL drafted players. They get second-round pick, taking number 44 overall, Aleksi Heimosalmi, who is a defenseman from Finland. So he gets his 3-year entry-level deal. And they've also come to terms with their other second-round pick, taking number 51 overall, a right winger from Finland, Ville Koivunen. So both players now officially under contract here with the Hurricanes organization. Of course, at this point, no real clear indication exactly where these players plan to play for the upcoming season, but good news is they're released officially signed and part of the organization now that they've been drafted. We also had a signing here today as well by the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have signed a third-round pick from the 2021 NHL Draft, Dmitry Kuzmin, who is a defenseman from Belarus. So he gets his 3-year deal on the books here as well. And we also saw the Arizona Coyotes sign a second-round pick, one of their 3 second-round picks actually, taking number 60th overall, Janis Moser, who's a defenseman from Switzerland. He gets his entry-level deal on the books here officially as well for the Coyotes organization. Now, as I mentioned, we do have some other updates, including an arbitration case that's only a couple of days away from taking place unless they can come to terms ahead of time, but it's not looking good at this point. However, things can change with one phone call, as they say. Teams can change their stance, player can change theirs. We'll see what happens. But the Minnesota Wild and Kevin Fiala have obviously placed all of their information ahead of time here for their hearing coming up, which is scheduled, I believe, for the 17th. So that's in about 48 hours from now. We will have word, hopefully before then, that they'll come to terms, because players do not want to go through this process. As I mentioned before, a high percentage of players going through the arbitration process do not stick with the team for an extended time after this seems to take place. There's a trend that way. Like I said, you end up in a nasty situation where both sides are arguing why they shouldn't be paid or should be paid, whatever, and it can get kind of nasty in there. But they're quite a ways apart here between the two sides. Apparently, the player who had been rumored to be asking for near $7 million apparently has officially requested $6.25 million, and the Wild are at $4 million. So they're $2.25 million apart. Of course, we've seen some other situations like this already in this offseason where they're $2 million apart. They closed the gap about halfway and got the deal done. So might we see them come to terms here maybe around the 5.5 range or something along those lines? To me, for a Fiala contract, that would be a lot more reasonable. But we'll see. At least that $7 million figure that was floating around out there, we can now say wasn't completely true. It was close, but not quite. So we'll see where they come to terms or if they end up in arbitration. And he's also put in on his arbitration request for a 1-year deal, because where this is team-elected arbitration, he can accept either a 1 or 2-year deal for whatever value the arbitrator gives. Obviously, he feels like the team might have a better chance to win the case and get a number closer to what they're requesting. So he'd only want that for 1 year, and they can go through this process again next year, or hopefully come to terms on their own ahead of time. But we'll see what happens between Fiala here and the Wild. Now, there's another NHL free agent I want to talk about here today. There are some rumors and speculation going around about the future of Zdeno Chara. Of course, the longtime Boston Bruin, former Ottawa Senator and New York Islander. And it was kind of odd to see him play in Washington last year, but he did have a decent year given where his age is and everything like that. The role they gave him was pretty decent. At this point, though, they really can't afford to bring him back. But there is some talk and speculation that he could possibly wind up with the Florida Panthers. Now, of course, we also saw recently they've signed Joe Thornton, of course, who played last year in Toronto. Same sort of contract would likely be what would be worked out. Similar situation. Chara seems to still have that drive to continue playing. And I know there's already been a lot of jokes about Florida, the retirement home, and all that for these older players, which is, you can have a little chuckle at that if you want. But ultimately, the Panthers, to me, are going to be a real solid team this year. They were really good last year. I can see them being at least as good or possibly even better for the coming season. And those are two real solid vets with a ton of experience. Obviously, Chara's got a cup. Thornton doesn't, but still, the stuff that those two guys and the intangibles and things would go a long way. And I know there's been some jokes around it as well, because obviously I know last year we saw the Leafs really focus on leadership and experience and all those things, all the vets they brought in, and look how that worked out for them. It's not, a foolproof method, not a guarantee that it's going to, bring that playoff success. But at this point, it can hurt for some depth players. They do have enough cap space in Florida to sign one more player. It's been rumored that they want one more defenseman and can kind of play, either a third pair or like a depth role, maybe like a 6-7. Guys like Thornton and Chara at this point, they probably wouldn't play them every day, given the fact that the last 2 seasons have been shorter between the early closure, I guess, because of COVID, and the last year being a 56-game season. These guys haven't played a full 82-game campaign in a while, so I would suspect, they'd probably play anywhere from 40 to 60 games, depending on how, if they stay healthy and how they're doing and all that kind of stuff, and kind of take a load management process here to kind of manage their time to make sure they can kind of keep enough gas in the tank to get through the year and hopefully for a longer playoff run. So we'll see how that works out. But that could possibly be finalized anytime, sometime this week possibly, or maybe a little bit later. As I said, the reports I've seen said sometime in the next week or two, it could be made official. So we'll see what happens. Now, before we jump into the trade speculation for today, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping into all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional video. I do greatly appreciate it. Just want to take a second as well and just acknowledge and thank you all again for all the recent support. The past few months have been absolutely phenomenal with the growth we've seen. Lots of new channel members. We've had lots of super thanks, lots of merchandise sales. So certainly I appreciate it very much. And of course, just a reminder as well, there is a sale on merchandise, which I'll give you a quick glimpse here on the screen with the promo code that you can use to get some discounts on some Top Shelf Hockey shirts, hoodies, etc. So check that out if you haven't already. Getting into today's Trade Talk, I want to have a look at a few things. Yesterday, we talked a bit about an article in the Ottawa Sun from Bruce Garriock talking about some things that the Senators were either working on previously in the offseason that they're still kind of working on here going forward before the season gets underway. And we didn't talk about everything yesterday. There's still a couple of tidbits I want to leave for another video. So for starters, I want to talk about the fact that he mentions that they've actually kicked tires on Jack Eichel. Now, of course, it shouldn't be a huge shock that a team like Ottawa, really, I would just be surprised if there wasn't almost every team around the league that at least checked in. But obviously, like he said in the article, that they checked in to kick tires. They were kind of humming about it, but you know what? The asking price was kind of steep, so they've kind of backed off. But like we've talked about with a lot of teams, that does not necessarily mean that they're completely out of the picture. So now that we have confirmation that they've had conversations, they've checked into it, it means they're thinking about it. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but if you look around what the Sabres want, they have a high asking price for picks and prospects. Well, the Sens are a team that's absolutely loaded in that regard. So could they pull it off? They absolutely could. Now, we haven't really talked about them being a team linked to this player much at all this offseason because it's really not believed that they were going to try to add a big piece like that to really accelerate this rebuild into full speed ahead. I mean, it's believed that the rebuild's kind of pretty much over, and now they need to start taking what all the players and everything they've accumulated and take it to the next step and to start, being more competitive and winning more now and getting into challenging for playoffs and that kind of stuff. I mean, the rebuild, some people don't think of it as being over until they're like a regular playoff team again, and we don't know they're going to be that as early as this year, but you throw in a guy like him and all of a sudden you take a major leap forward, right? And of course they have a lot, and I stress a lot, of young U.S.-born players that he would be quite familiar with, that he would have played a lot with through different international competitions and lower-level teams in the past that he would be, friendly with and would know well. So it could be something that he may not actually mind. I mean, I think many people agree that if Eichel had his choice, he'd probably be a Bruin. I think that's probably first and foremost where he'd like to go, but it's not as always easy to get your first love and first choice. So all that being said, like I said, the Sens have a ton of pieces, but one other player that they mentioned here, not necessarily in an Eichel conversation, but they could be looking to possibly use as a trade chip to help them get that center that they're looking for, would be young defenseman Erik Brannstrom. He basically at this point could be an odd man out type of thing. He's kind of struggled to find consistency and find that NHL style is going to work for him. I mean, he's a smaller defenseman, but he's fairly mobile. But as much as the offensive side and his breakouts, passing, and all that has been pretty decent, the defensive side of the game inside the blue line has been, a work in progress, you could say, and it's certainly something that needs to continue to get better. They brought in Victor Mete at the end of the year, who was a nice piece for them, a nice addition, played well. They've signed some vets this offseason like Del Zotto, brought in Nick Holden. So it just means that, I'm not saying that they're going to trade Brannstrom, and I don't think Bruce Chara can say not either, but he's just saying he could be a piece they use along with Logan Brown that we talked about yesterday to upgrade that center position, and it kind of makes sense that would be. I mean, I probably want to be careful with this prospect. He's one of the main pieces that came over in a Mark Stone deal. They want to obviously get that deal right, but if this player's not going to work out for them, then you kind of have to make a decision at some point and move forward. So if they were to go seriously on Eichel and jump back into that conversation, I would suspect that their offer to the Sabres would include guys like Logan Brown and Erik Brannstrom. You have some other pieces, maybe like a Colin White, maybe an Alex Formanton. They have a bunch of young goalies. They could possibly include one of them. Do they even include maybe a guy like a Jacob Bernard-Docker or something like that? Is it possible? I mean, they don't want to throw too much in here, but they could throw in multiple picks in there. Like they do have, if the Sabres don't really want much in the way of money on the books, this could be a good trade partner for them because Ottawa has lots of cap space, so they don't really need to shed much in the way of money. And they have all kinds of either players that are really young that are just starting in the NHL or that are still prospects, and along with draft picks. Like they could put together a pretty appealing package, in my opinion. So I guess we'll see how aggressive they want to be, and if Eugene Melnyk and Pierre Dorion want to jump in here and try to land this big player, because I know Eugene seems to be interested in really trying to accelerate things. At least it appears that way. I think he wants to do it, but not convinced he wants to spend the money to do it. So it's kind of hard to do, right? And you just never know. He's got a reputation for being cheap, and I know I've been hard on him in that regard for a long time because until he proves that he's not, it's kind of hard to say that he's changed any. So we'll see how that goes, but just interesting to see and hear that they've actually kicked tires on one of the top trade pieces around the NHL. Now, one of the other guys I want to talk about here today as well is Tarasenko a little bit, just reading some more information on the Carolina Hurricanes in a recent article on The Athletic from Sarah Sivian, talking about the fact that they are very interested in adding a top six forward, and that is, obviously Tarasenko is one of the guys they have been linked to. Now, when it comes to cap space, though, when it comes to the Hurricanes, they would have to shed a decent contract going back the other way, because if you look at their cap space right now, it's not in too terribly bad a shape, obviously. The Hurricanes are in a situation where they still need to sign young top forward Andrei Svechnikov, which is going to be an expensive, preferably long-term deal, but it may not be. I do have some concerns over this one as well getting done, given the fact that we've seen how Tom Dundon's been lately. I do wonder where things stand in that, and I hope they get this done without too much trouble. But they have about $12.3 million, and it really just boils down to if they go longer term or shorter term on what his contract's going to be. It could be anywhere from like $6-7 million. It could be $8-9 million. It really depends on how long term and how many years they want to buy up with this process. I think if the team has his way, though, they'll ink Svechnikov long term for a bigger deal, something maybe comparable to Aho, and kind of move forward here. But I mean, I would think they'd have to shed a contract, whether it be a defenseman like a Jake Gardiner, who might be difficult to do because I know he's having issues with his back and still battling injuries. Hasn't really been the same the past couple of years. Or a piece like maybe a Teravainen or a Niederreiter might have to be the one of the players going to St. Louis in a Tarasenko deal here as well, if they're going to get that done. But, interesting to note that the Canes are certainly looking for that kind of player. And they have been one of the teams linked to him, along with like the Islanders and the Devils. And so the Islanders are still a head-scratching situation. Very secretive. We don't know what in the heck Lou Lamoriello is working on back there. I mean, he's working on a trade of some sort, is what many believe, but what is it? We don't know. Could be a variety of things, seeing how things go. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But obviously, if the Canes were to get a guy like Tarasenko, that could possibly be a nice acquisition for them. Depending on what they give up, of course. There's going to be some risk given the fact that he hasn't played much the last 2 years, and some teams do appear to be a little leery on that shoulder situation. So we'll see what happens, but that's the latest on a couple of the big names that have been in the trade rumor mill for quite some time that haven't yet been moved. Hopefully we'll get a resolution to these situations before we get to training camp. So that is all your news and updates for today. Of course, as always, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.